Welcome to the 12 Days of Edition Wars, featuring 2nd edition AD&D players and DM's options books. In this special series, we're taking a close look at these books that are often considered D&D Edition 2.5. On the 6th day of the Edition Wars, my DM gave to me Combat and Tactics, Part 3.
Yeah, man.
What do you have to say for yourself, sir?
Well, last time we covered 2 whole chapters of this book, and I'm damn proud of us. So that gets us up to Chapter 4, Weapon Specialization and Mastery, and it leaves us with the obligation to finish this book. So, strap in.
So, this chapter, Chapter 4, Weapons Specialization and Mastery.
So the summary of this chapter is, you know how you get all of these weapon proficiency slots, and then, like, you have your weapon, and you don't really want to change your weapon, but you still get proficiency slots? Wouldn't it be nice if you could do something with that? And so they do. And so you just get more and more and more mastery. So it walks us through, expertise, specialization, mastery, high mastery, and grand mastery. Sure. And also fighting style specializations, and a lot of this, I kind of feel like we might have covered in an episode on attack rolls, but maybe we didn't.
What I was actually going to say was perhaps the way to cover this chapter is to actually point out what's different about it compared to the core 2nd edition rules, because weapons proficiencies and specializations are in the core.
Sure. So in core rules, you don't have a concept of expertise as a separate step. What you have is non-proficiency, and man, second edition is soul-crushingly stingy on weapon proficiency compared to every other edition. It is wildly stingier on weapon proficiency than every other edition, because fighters start with actual proficiency in up to 4 weapons, not all weapons of this category. That's a thing. And then above that you have proficiency and specialization. And specialization is tightly restricted in vanilla 2nd ed to fighters, and they have to choose specialization at first level, which makes no sense. Specialization as a benefit of advancement is far more sensible and narrative embracing, but whatever, it's fine. I don't know why they wanted to do that. It doesn't make any sense to me as a thing, and ultimately the drawbacks of getting stuck with a weapon you aren't specialized in just means that you're not going to see magic items of that weapon type as being interesting treasure. And
let's be honest, there was no need really to hobble the fighters anyway. They really already were underpowered after the beginning few levels.
Though in fairness, weapon specialization is pretty cool.
Sure, but to restrict it though, to restrict it is what I'm saying is what was not necessary.
Getting more attacks a little bit faster is pretty cool. Yeah, it didn't need restriction. That was not called for. So that's your base state, and so this shifts it more in the direction of we've talked in other episodes in this sort of special series about how other classes get to buy weapon specialization if they really sink the points into it, and as we've discussed, nothing in this chapter is going to be integrated with any of that content. That's not a thing. You just have to figure out for yourself how and if it applies. But it is much less. Oh yeah, you can change your specialization. You can only be specialized in one weapon at a time, which is very dictionary definition of specialization. Sure, no problem. But you can spend 2 extra proficiency slots to change your weapon specialization. So that's a terrible deal. Oh, yeah, and the cost actually scales up from there. Yeah, you don't ever change your specialization. It's not worth it. Just glare at your DM every time a weapon that isn't your specialized weapon it comes into the game, because that will definitely improve your table experience. It won't, by the way.
So
don't do that.
I think the part of the problem with this chapter for me is it's written as if it's providing these extra things for you to take a hold of and to use to make your character, more, it's meant to be, it's trying to show it as here's more options, but actually the specialization starts becoming so restrictive that it actually reduces your options.
Well, like baseline specialization is already restrictive in this way. The restrictions here on weapon specialization are technically a loosening because you can alter your specialization at all. That's just a terrible rule, and it sticks you with so much buyer's remorse as a player that it's a terrible rule. So the weird thing to me is they offer you expertise separately as a step between proficiency and weapon specialization. And it gives you the more desirable aspect of weapon specialization, not the less desirable one. It gives you the extra attacks.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want me to keep spending for the less valuable part? Why? Anyway, it's fine. It's just, I like that it at least acknowledges skills and powers here. Note that skills and powers allows your character to customize his class and receive abilities he normally could not attain. Under these rules, paladins, rangers, and multi-class fighters can specialize at the cost of sacrificing other abilities or advantages.
So, here's another thing that it introduces, though, later on in this chapter. It brings in special talents, which is basically feats, right? Alertness, ambidexterity, ambush, endurance, camouflage, fine balance, iron will, dirty fighting.
Right, for sure. Right. And we've talked before about how all of the non-weapon proficiencies are also feats. They're just, other than blind fighting for the most part, they're less combat-y feats. And this is sort of knocking down that wall and saying, yeah, no, go ahead and spend your proficiency slots on this too, including initial ratings.
Right.
Which,
but there's even trouble sense, right? And so I want to make a point about this little trouble sense section, because it says, sometimes it's known as danger sense. This gives the character a chance to detect otherwise undetectable threats. The character's trouble sense comes into play when the character is threatened by a danger they have not noticed yet. Okay, fine. Then it says, it goes on in true second edition style and says, well, the DM should make the trouble sense check in secret. If the character succeeds, then it changes how they're surprised and whatnot, which is, a really stark reminder of the time and the context that this book was written in. It's making strides, and then,
for sure.
then there's that. So,
yeah. The mechanical implementation of trouble sense is very kind of, well, I guess you did the least you possibly could. Sure. And a lot of these features are also class features you could buy as a fighter in skills and powers. So the integration with skills and powers is especially thorny in this chapter. Like what I was, what the text I didn't quite get out from the paragraph I read earlier, explicitly goes on to say, well, you shouldn't actually give Rangers, Paladins, and multiclass fighters specialization. You should let them have expertise instead. And all I can think is, if as a player, I spent my extra points to buy specialization and I sacrificed other class abilities to get that, and then you tell me, oh no, you're still not a single class fighter, you can't have real specialization, what you get is the lesser version expertise instead, I'm flipping that table. Bye. No. You broke your word to me, right? Like, you literally gave me a bait and switch. No. So that would be a real deal breaker for me.
Didn't we say this about something about the beginning of the book too, about how the integration of skills and powers and combat and tactics for being released so close together? I mean, they were only released a month apart in the same year.
Yeah.
And so there's a reasonable expectation that a large portion of the population that's going to use these books or look at them at all are going to have them both at the same time.
Right.
And so the integration, how to work the two in together, is definitely not seamless, and in some places it's not intuitive at all.
Right.
And it's a little thorny. I have to say.
Yeah, it really is. Anyway, moving on from there, as is standard for second ed, each kind of missile weapon has its own unique specialization rules, and I don't actually know why they do that, other than really, really loving very involved tables of attacks per round and attacks per alternating round. But sure.
Yeah.
There's a realism argument to be made around firearms that, well, it's really hard to learn to reload a firearm that much faster, but the gameplay that is lost there is just, it's not worth it. Like breaking down each kind of firearm so that you have a different rate of fire as a high-level specialist with a snap lock as opposed to a wheel lock horse pistol. Guys, get a grip.
Well, but once again, though, this is the book that wants to show the ever so minute differences between, one thing from another. Why would you choose the wheel lock belt pistol other than the snap lock? Well, in this case, there's no difference in the level of specialist, right?
So you're looking to the damage die or whatever.
Yeah, probably.
So after that, we get weapon mastery and grades of mastery, which seems to generally just carry larger. Right. Mastery is, it inflates your attack and damage bonus. You go from +1 attack and +2 damage to +3/+3. You basically get giant growth from Magic the Gathering. I'm sure that's accurate. And then we move into high mastery, which increases your crit range down to 16 to 20, which is crazy. But that's only if you're using the optional 18 to 20 crit threat range that is found elsewhere in this book, which, and you still have to hit your opponent by a margin of 5 or more. It improves your overall range for all the different ranged weapons. And then Grand Mastery, finally, you've now invested piles and piles of slots into this one weapon, and you can't really go around changing your mind about that. And what gets me about this is just that it's D&D. Like, the right answer is longsword. By such a huge margin. The right answer is longsword, and it's so regrettable.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, I love longswords. They're enormously fun weapons, but to be this restrictive, like, I don't know, it drives me nuts. So Grandmasters gain 1 additional attack per round above and beyond the specialist rate of attack around for their level. So you just get to throw out all kinds of attacks. And you also increase your weapon's damage die and your knockdown chance. We talked about the knockdown business back in chapter 1, I believe. And there's the whole thing about, well, now a longsword goes from a D8 weapon against small or medium targets and a D12 weapon against large targets. Because remember, kids, that's the thing in 2nd edition. Weapons do different amounts of damage based on the size of the target. It goes up by 1 die size, so now it's a D10, D20 weapon. Sure. And its knockdown die is increased to a D10. If the weapon causes multiple dice of damage, all of them are increased. So a 2-handed sword in the hands of a Grandmaster inflicts 3d8 points of damage on large targets. Sure. That's rad. Don't get me wrong. If I can sign up for that, let's go. But that's crazy. And it means you're just getting very uneven levels of benefit from different weapons. And so there's a big system mastery push going on here. You need to pay attention to, whether you expect the campaign to go long enough to get Grand Mastery, because
it makes a difference.
I'm not sure what level you have to be to get Grand Mastery, but right. So Mastery is 5th, and looks like 2nd slot of Mastery until 6th is 3rd until 9th. So right, Grand Mastery is a 9th level thing at soonest, just because of when you earn
enough slots. Yeah.
And there's a discussion of how maybe you should, lock all these levels of mastery behind quests. And if it weren't so tied to, level advancement and you've got to be exactly the right level to do this thing, then I'd be all about that. But as it is, it's just going to be an excuse to make you wait another 3 levels because, well, you didn't quite finish that quest by the time you hit 9th level, so I guess you have to wait till 12th. This is my unamused look at that GM. And so then we kick into fighting style specializations, which is much the same, except that there's not multiple levels of mastery for these. But you can specialize in a fighting style to gain additional benefit. I mean, this is very, very feat-like material. All of the mastery levels are your greater weapon focus, greater weapon specialization sort of feat chain. And, all of this kind of material showed up at some point in 3rd edition. Your weapon and shield style stuff gives you a free shield bash each round without losing the shield's benefit, because the shield bash by default makes you sacrifice the shield's AC. Not that shields are worth a whole ton of AC in second, but that's okay. Actually, I think this book might modify that upward.
Depends on the shield. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, you have different levels of AC bonus depending on your proficiency in the shield.
Right.
That's not a thing in core second at all. Shields just grant +1 AC in vanilla second ed, but this has a whole proficiency like bracket for each shield size, and then a maximum number of attackers you can apply that shield bonus to AC against and around. So a medium shield, which is probably the most normal kind of shield, is 3 points of AC. And that's, math tip, a lot better than 1. So not sacrificing that much AC and also getting a shield bash, well, yes, I would like that, please, thank you. One-handed weapon style grants you functionally the benefits of a buckler, but against all enemies. And that seems really perverse to me, that the buckler can only be applied against one attacker per round. It only grants 1 point of AC, but by having nothing in your hand, you get +1 AC all the time because you specialized. And you can spend another slot to increase that to +2. Even worse.
See, that's an example, that one-handed weapon style thing. That's an example of a little segment here that is mechanically explained, but the rationale is absent. So the thing is that it looks like we just wanted, we needed there to be a one-handed weapon style, and we have to give you some kind of mechanical benefit for it.
Sure. And their whole concept is to support, rapier and open hand swashbucklers. That's what they're trying to get at, or sort of a longsword and open hand brawler. And I do get that. It's just it feels like within a single chapter they didn't integrate the idea and think it through.
So let's move away from this chapter. Unless there's something specific you want to say about any of the talents, the basic feats.
No, I think that I've gone through the fighting styles in more detail than podcasting really calls for, and I mean the talents are they're cool ideas, they're cool things to be able to buy, and I'm not gonna lie, they do add a lot of interest to the fighter for all of those proficiency slots or character points you're getting that aren't doing a lot of other interesting stuff for you. So in that regard, I am very much in favor of this. As a sort of note looking forward, we're going to be seeing a lot of this again in the DM's option book. This is, I think, reprinted pretty close to verbatim in that book.
But with more.
Oh, yeah?
I think it has more, doesn't it?
I believe that. Yeah, why not?
So, and then then this transitions into chapter 5. But before that, there's another nice full-page color piece of art that I quite like.
No, I like that a lot too. The textures here are very good, and the visuals are extremely weird. It is saying a lot about what they think second edition could look like at your table, because there's an airship.
Yes, but it's a boat with a keel and everything.
Yeah,
and it has a giant balloon attached to it that is made of various different cloth pieces of different colors.
Okay, so not only is that true, it is also not the weirdest thing in the picture.
Right. Well, and then if you look directly down from it, there's this tower, and at the bottom of that tower, there is this place where the wall has been broken up, and there is like some kind of a very large person or something. I don't know if they're going into the fire or out of the fire. It's very interesting.
Right, and the human pyramid thing
Yes,
that the
to
cheerleaders
the
have
top,
built
yeah.
against the wall is
Right.
amazing.
Where
But
and the
also-
siege machine is coming up right behind them, and the
Right.
drawbridge is about to open on them.
Yeah. Now, in fairness, also, we should be slapped for describing an image in a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, that's why I tried to say the page number of the last one. So I'll tell you the page number of this one, page 81, because it is just a very I like it. I like the image. It is just some of it is very bizarre. There's skeleton soldiers fighting, presumably alongside the humans at the bottom of the picture.
oh yeah,
I'm not sure.
I think the cheerleaders stacked up on the wall are actually supposed to be skeletons.
Those are skeletons, yeah. And then there's yeah. It's very interesting. And then we get to your favorite chapter, and I know it is Unarmed Combat.
I'm in so much pain, and it's only going
Okay.
to get worse.
You get 5 minutes.
Okay, so how many different unarmed combat systems do we have? That's what I want to know. So we have pummeling, we have wrestling, we have
Well, there's
overbearing.
brawling. You miss brawling.
Oh, I miss brawling. Yeah, brawling. Good. Yeah. Martial arts, subdual attacks, and then a whole new set of let's go ahead and call them feats. Like, people understand better what we mean if we just call them feats. This says martial arts talents, but we all know. So yeah, that is a ton of different non-integrated styles that are not going to have much of anything to do with each other.
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's kind of like here's how several ways you could do it. Pick one, and use that one in your game.
Yeah, and expect to run into each of them potentially.
Right.
But yeah, like overbearing is, much like a helicopter mom, expanding in later chapters. Just as you age, it's just more and more and more.
Yeah. I also want to point out that every chapter in this book, there's the first page of the chapter says, chapter whatever, and then the title of the chapter has a little intro, and all of them have this little section that says, "Does this belong in my campaign?" And I just want to say that the one for this chapter is especially unhelpful. So I'm going to read it to you because it's like a paragraph and a half. So here's how it goes. It says the material in this chapter is an extension of the combat options in Chapter 2, and it is intended for use with the player's option combat system presented in Chapter 1. This chapter can be used by itself, however. Brawling, subduing, and martial arts can all be incorporated into a campaign separately or together. And that's it. That is your absolutely unhelpful.
I mean, in fairness, I can deliver that answer much more succinctly. I can do it in 2 little letters.
Yes. No.
No. and like, the thing is, I love the action dynamic that you see in action movies of weapon in one hand and punching bad guys with the other hand. Maybe use the sword to drive the weapon out of the way, and you punch with your other hand or whatever. I love that stuff, and this is not going to help you with it.
Although I will say, and I'm going to be a bad podcaster again and comment on another picture from page 85. This is the first picture I have seen of a very rotund pirate.
Yep.
And he looks like he's wearing wooden shoes. So, there's some really good art in this book, and then there's some art that's a little questionable. But it's all enjoyable, so I can't knock it too bad. I'm not an artist at all, but it's a little piece of interesting little art of shirtless rotund pirate punching a some kind of fighter person in plate mail. So we'll see.
Well, Ken Frank, if you're listening to this podcast, I apologize on Sam's behalf.
Hey, I didn't say it's not good. I said it's a good piece of art. It's just not quite what I expected. So I don't really have a lot to say about this chapter other than I just, it's probably not anything. I don't ever remember using any of it.
Yeah, let's do the thing where we protect our not explicit rating and just don't. I'm a lose it in a bit. I mean, my language is bad enough anyway. We don't need to provoke me. It's fine. I'm trying to be good.
Well, it does have the martial arts talents in the back, with the
the martial arts talents in the back are fine.
Those are
I have no problem with those.
So let's move on.
Well, okay. Backward kick is kind of dumb. Backward kick is kind of dumb.
Well,
that's okay.
But in terms of yeah, okay. But it's meant to be like, Bruce Lee style martial arts cinematic,
Sure, just drilling down on facing and provoking opportunity attacks for attacking someone, that is on the other side of you.
Right, but
I ain't got time for that.
So let's move on then to chapter 6.
But yeah. It's All right. So chapter 6 is critical hits, and man, does this belong in my campaign is almost phrased like it's saying.
No. Did you? Let me read the first sentence. It's here's the first. While the rest of this book assumes that you will be playing with the full critical hit tables and rules. Okay, so first it starts off by telling you the previous 100 pages assume that you'll be using this. And then it says, but you'll find that this chapter can be completely disregarded with no ill effects. But the other 100 pages you just got done reading assume that you will be using it. But there's no ill effects for ignoring it.
So I respect modular rules that can be that don't hook into each other enough that things break if you drop them in and out. And that's been a conscious part of 5th edition design. But it's not in evidence here. Man, things are going to get weird if you are trying to use this book without this set of rules, because it does assume them. And we saw that in the weapon mastery section we just covered. It's
pretty explicit to a lot of those effects.
Really
I will say one other thing, though, about this. Does it belong in my campaign section? It says there is one thing that's really important, and that is that if monsters suffer critical hits because you allow your players to use them, then the player characters should also suffer them. In other words, you should apply the same rules to the monsters and the PCs.
Yep. And, it's weird to me that you have to remember to say that, but I certainly agree with
it. Their follow-up is otherwise game balance quickly goes out the window. So the thing is, remember that previous to this, well, I don't want to say previous to this, 2nd edition, remember, went a long way toward trying to equalize things so that things were more transparent to the players and they could have a reasonable ability to predict or make a decision about whether they want to engage in a particular situation or combat. And so there was this sort of idea of, well, if it's balanced, it's easier for me to be able to predict that and make that decision in a fair way. And so there is some sort of attention to balance, although not anywhere near balance like what you see in, say, 4th edition. But there is that. So,
So right. I mean, it is important that this whole chapter can be dropped in and dropped out with as little alteration as possible because it has two different critical hit systems. Um, and critical hit system 1 is something that we would recognize very, very much in 5th edition, actually. Uh, you double the base damage dice of the weapon, and then you add your flat adds. Well, yep, that sounds familiar. Um, you don't double any other variable dice that you are rolling for damage, such as backstab. That's fine. This is because there's a crit range of 18 to 20, and you have to hit by 5. It's fine that you're going to be critting more often, and you just don't get the crit value of your backstab or whatever else you have going on. Your I guess flame tongue weapon might be extra damage dice at this point. Maybe not. I don't remember.
It's very simple. Critical system number 1. It's very simple. There's no wounds. There's no injury. There's no sustained damage or anything like that. And it takes about a half a page to describe. And then you get critical hit system number 2.
Yep. And then you get critical hit system number 2, which is the rest of the chapter. And I mean, I think that both someone looking to attack the system and someone looking to praise it would say that it looks like it came out of Rollmaster. And honestly, the critical hits and damage charts of Rollmaster are either your thing or they are not. And if they are not, then jog on. This chapter is not going to help you in any way because it wants to delve into the many varied and horrible things that weapons do to bodies. And like, if you want to run a D&D game about how violence is ugly and your character will probably be unplayable by about 3rd level, then here you go.
Okay, so let me give you 2 examples. Okay, so the first thing you do, I'm using the bludgeoning versus humanoids table. The first thing you do is you roll a d10 to find your location. So let's say you roll a 6 or 7, that's the torso. Now you move over to the location torso table for your severity.
It's weapon versus target size. Weapon size is less than target size. Weapon size is equal to target size. Weapon size is greater than target size. Weapon is 2 sizes larger. So it's D6, 2D4, 2D6, or 2D8. And there's no add to that roll. So
9 means you got hit in the torso, your ribs are broken, you have some minor internal bleeding, you cut your move in half, your movement rate, and you get a -2 penalties to attack, okay? If you calculate a 12, your torso is crushed and the victim is killed.
So what's going to happen is, if the weapon is greater than the target size, that's the only time you're going to get those instant kills from crushing the torso. But yeah, this enormously favors big two-handed weapons. I mean, really, really favors it. I cannot understand how someone would continue to want to use small or medium weapons if this chapter is in play. Just goodness.
Well, and so you have a whole page of bludgeoning versus humanoids, a page of bludgeoning versus animals, a page of bludgeoning versus monsters, a page of piercing versus humanoids, page of piercing versus animals. Do you get the idea here? So you've got 9, 10 pages because you've got slashing, piercing, bludgeoning. You've got humanoids and animals.
I mean, it is a lot, and
Yeah.
those 12 results on a lot of these are indeed immediate death, but some of them aren't, and it's kind of random, kind of unpredictable. It just depends on the weapon type and what the author felt like writing that day, I guess. I mean, a 12 against a limb destroys that limb most of the time and restricts movement and major bleeding and so on. Just, I'm sure I don't know how anyone survives to even intermediate levels with this system in place, if there's any significant amount of combat. But if that's the game you want to play, like...
Right, well, because the other thing is, how does any of that heal, right?
Well, so, I mean, there's rules for that, but...
Right, but I just mean in terms of... Right.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like when you start talking about these tables definitely do invoke a very role master style.
Yep.
And then when you start talking about healing, well,
and I've listened to Robin Laws talk about Glorantha to a pretty fair degree, and all of the limb severing horror that is very consciously intended to deter players from choosing combat until they have a regrow limb spell. And I mean, you can definitely decide that's what you want from your D&D, and have a good time. It's not what I'm after personally. This is gory and horrific, and that could be a cool thing, but I probably wouldn't use D&D for it. I think it is, even within the attempt to drill down to realism that combat and tactics is chasing. I think this is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sort of big and overwhelming, and the chapter's very hard to get an overall sense of in short order, just because the description of the different levels of injury, of grazed, injured, broken, crushed, shattered, or destroyed, and severed, they're big walls of text.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I wanted to just give two very basic examples. And some of these things are really, I mean, they're going to cause a pretty, as you say, gory description of what's happening, right? It's not just, oh, I got punched and my rib hurts. It's, the snout of this creature is injured and they are doing this, and there's all this blood, and there's this over here, and severe bleeding, and it's very evocative of something that is different from...
Yeah. I mean, I could kind of see using this in a sort of meat grinder game where you want to do something sort of reminiscent of Darkest Dungeon, where you're going to be going through a lot of characters, and maybe you have several sessions where you have a new character in each session, and then by about the fifth or sixth session, you kind of continue playing whoever's most viable after all that. But, you don't necessarily get hit with a bad crit every session. Just when you do, it's over. Very possibly.
Right.
So if you want crits to be to have a player convinced that they might be done playing that character, this is the system for you. And I mean, critting on 18 to 20 is...
Or 16 to 20 if you have that particular...
Or 16, yeah. Well, sure. But you're probably not going to be facing monsters that have Grand Mastery. High Mastery. Probably not a thing.
Right, sure. So do you want to move on to the next chapter?
Yeah, let's. So chapter 7 is Weapons and Armor.
And it does not have a "should I use this in my game" section.
Right. But this is largely a rehash by historical period and region, though not historical period by region. It's either historical period in Europe or region for non-Europe.
And quite literally, it just takes the weapons and puts them into tables labeled either the region that they're talking about or the time period they're talking about.
Right. And I mean, the text is self-aware that it's doing this. It talks about the fact that unlike the previous categories which trace the semi-historical progression, etc., like it knows that it's only looking at one sort of impressionistic, summary of all the time periods you might be pursuing. It's tables and tables of weapon costs, and I mean that it is strange that they only list costs for all of these tables so they can go through all the time periods. Like, I don't know, that seems like an odd way to organize the information. But anyway.
Well, because later on you have the comprehensive tables, right?
Exactly. Right? I really feel like that probably could have been...
Oh, sure. I'm agreeing with you. I think the format is a little odd.
And they do the same thing for all the suits of armor, and oh, God help you if you really chase piecemeal armor. But this, again, I think is them trying to like draw in people who loved Rollmaster and Glorantha and a lot of the smaller, high brutality, high realism fantasy games, or maybe this was just written by someone who thought those games were the cat's pajamas and wanted to see that in their D&D, and they weren't specifically targeting those fan bases. Who knows?
Or a mix of both. Perhaps they loved it so much themselves they thought perhaps they'll pull some D&D players into the love of that material as well, which is fair.
Right, and I think that whatever else I may say about all of this, it's hard to see it as anything other than the writer believed in what they were saying, right? That I have no doubt in. But when you get to the comprehensive weapons table, so many stats have been added in this book or get specified here that it is a just immediate bleeding from the eyes kind of what am I even looking at chart. It is 4 pages of small print and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 columns. So sure. Like you have a knockdown die for every weapon, and you just need to be going through all of these and picking your weapon type and everything based on which variant rules your DM is using, and like there's superscript letters for this whole list of footnotes.
20 types of pole arms.
Well, it's D&D. What do you want?
I know.
But what also kills me is the just totally randomized use of shading to help you trace lines across.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Some of them are 3. Yeah. Some of them are 2.
What was the thought there? How did that help?
Yeah. What is this? Yeah. Some of them are 1.
Like, okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like, I don't know. This is just sort of a good visual summary of my takeaway from the whole book. This is intense, dense stuff, and so the rest of the chapter is a paragraph or 2, or in the case of oil, quite a few more paragraphs on that thing as a weapon. Sword also, God be praised, gets plenty of paragraphs.
Which, let's be fair, some of these these descriptions, if we're fair, they're good because people don't know what these things are.
Well, and that's absolutely fair. Lord knows this is how I learned what a bunch of these weapons were, because I would never think to look up some of these letter combinations because they're literally not in English. So why would I even know about that weapon? Because this book came out when I was a kid. I don't know. This is one of the more like approachable and appealing chapters to my 15-year-old self, because at least I could immediately visualize the use at the table for all of this, and I could appreciate the visual narrative of piecemeal armor or all these different armor types, and I could appreciate the blatant power gaming of trying to get the best AC that my money could buy. That's appealing in its own right. Sure, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with wanting something that's going to let you customize really, really deeply and squeeze out a little extra benefit, I guess. But this is a lot to try to get through. In fairness, reading pages and pages of details about cool medieval weapons from Europe and beyond, I'm still here for that. That is my deal. I'm not gonna lie. That part I'm totally into. Like a whole new variety of cool swords I've never heard of. I guess I know what I'm doing for the next half hour. Let's go. I am totally that person.
Yeah, I'm here for this too. This is my favorite chapter.
And they do the same with armor descriptions, which, like, if anything, I like even more than a huge chapter on weapons. Just put that in my veins. That's great. But we also get weapon groups, which is an idea that has surfaced in other editions.
It has evolved.
Other editions since this one, yeah.
Well, because here the weapon groups are by they're sort of separated by weapon type almost. Clubs, maces, and flails. clubs, maces, and flails have basically a shaft, right?
Right. There's sort of your parent category and your child category as you drill down to the individual weapon. And there's the sort of interesting thing about this is just you can sort of look at these and see how 5th Ed, weapon design thinking with its much smaller list of weapons sort of consciously pulled back one level of detail, right? So that you instead have, you have a few of the different axes, but not nearly as many as this book has, and then only one pick and only 2 of the hammers, and so on. It's just telling you any of these weapons could be a stand-in for other weapons in that category.
And for game purposes, they have basically the same mechanics. So there you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then the ways swords get categorized is just some hot nonsense, but that's okay. No.
Yeah.
No. All right. No. Yeah.
Moving along.
But like I said, reading multiple pages on armor is still my deal. I'm a man who would walk half a day to see a good armor, and then we get into horse barding. Sure. I will read about more armor. Yes, absolutely. Go on.
And an awesome picture of a war dog with armor on.
Fido is looking very, very dapper and ready to go. And considering how distressed players will get if something happens to their attack pup,
Their pet.
I am 0% surprised.
Yes.
That is exactly what I would do in a D&D game if armor were not absolutely terrible for a dog's ability to move and all that weight weren't going to hurt its back, because dogs don't do that. But that's okay.
I want to go back to something before we move on, and that is that it at the end of the description of all the weapons, it has a little section on weapons and ability bonuses. And it points out that generally the rules are that a character applies their strength bonus to any weapon that's powered by their own muscles. But then it says, well, let's look at this example of a 16th level dart specialist. It's ludicrous to allow a high-strength character the full benefit of their muscular power if they insist on using tiny little weapons like darts. And then it goes on to tell the DM how to address this. And basically, it tells the DM to cap the total strength bonus that PC would get. Which makes me question. Now, I understand they're trying to make sure that nobody outshines another PC and that they're trying to have this sort of pseudo balance thing going on. But really what this does for me is it makes me think, why in the hell did you just spend 10 pages on charts and tables explaining all of the differences and all of the little tiny minutia around these weapons if you're then going to follow that up with telling the DM to go ahead and nerf something if you feel like it doesn't make sense to you. It's too strong. In other words, if I was that player who created the 16th level dart specialist, right, and I put all my all my everything into strength because I knew that that's a thrown weapon, and so it gets to add my strength bonus, and then my DM comes to me at 16th level and says, well, I know you put a lot of effort into this and you put a lot of resources into building this character this way, but it doesn't make sense to me because those darts are really small, so I'm going to cap your ability.
Yeah.
What?
I mean,
talk about flipping the table, right?
Oh yeah. Like a player who got to the point where that was a thing, and now you spring that on them. Oh no! My experience of players and my experience as a player is just, how am I supposed to feel okay about that if we haven't discussed that from the beginning of the game, and you're now going to spring that on me? But
yeah. So moving along.
So right, that brings us to the end of Chapter 7, Weapons. I think for both of us, by far the most approachable and engageable chapter of this book so far.
Yeah. And at this time in my life, I was playing more than I was DMing, so this chapter was like, you can read this chapter, and even though the tables are full of minutia, you can read it and understand what's happening, and it feels good to read it and feel like you're gaining some knowledge about the game without having to actually try to memorize the tactics and all that crap in the first and second and third chapters. Although I ended up going back and doing that too, but that's beside the point.
Sure. So now we get into Chapter 8, which is Siege Warfare. And I think that questioning whether this belongs in your campaign is fine, but at the same time, I without getting into the details of the chapter's rules, when you need this kind of thing, this is the kind of thing that you need. It needs to be a fairly, engaged and involved rules module, because you're in a very different kind of game situation than ordinary play. And so I'm here for a good amount of this, though, as we're going to see, this is a lot. And
Well, they do a good job, generally speaking, of laying it out, explaining the problems and issues, and trying to use as many diagrams as possible to show what they're talking about. But they run into the same problem that we ran into way back even in chapter 1, when they start using these diagrams, and it's very difficult to use these the maps and miniatures and whatnot, in those other previous chapters we talked about. It's very difficult to use those for individual combat. When you start talking about major sieges, now it's even more difficult.
Right. And to me, there's very much a sense that this chapter wants to fully fold the wargaming scenario back into D&D, and get some of that wargaming DNA back into the game, but it is very involved, and it is very much in the thought pattern of people standing around the wargaming table at that's their dining room table or their game shop, and engaging with it that way, and not engaging with like the general form of D&D, because you have the extra scatter die rolls or indirect fire rolls for, well, I was aiming for this square but I hit this square instead, kind of business.
At that point, you're full on in the miniature wargaming milieu, and you're not as much concerned with what I would consider D&D, which is an individual representing an individual character.
Right. And there's so for me, the good parts of this chapter are the same as chapter 7, right? There's interesting things to learn about medieval and early modern warfare if you don't already know this. Well, really all the way back to the ancient world. There's things to learn from this if you don't have an existing foundation of knowledge. Things like all the business about different vehicles, how does as fighting platforms. I mean, this is trying to help you run Return of the King, right? In interesting ways. It's just it's not going to be easy to use at the table, because it's so big, and it's such a bulky chapter.
Well, let's be honest. It's talking about a different game, right?
Oh, absolutely.
At this point, it's kind of analogous to the dueling thing we talked about earlier, where if I'm playing with a group, there's a reason I'm not going to use those dueling rules, because you have to pull everybody out of it and play this mini game that only deals with an NPC and one character. In this case, you're pulling everybody out of the regular game to basically set up a war.
Yep.
And now you're no longer an individual playing in that game. Now you're a commander commanding parts of armies. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not bashing it. It's great fun, but it's not usually what one has in D&D. And they say as much in the very beginning. They say, most campaigns aren't going to use this. And you said it the best. You said, well, this is exactly what you need when you need it. But if you don't ever hit that situation in your game, then you don't need this at all.
I mean, the idea of defending Minas Tirith against the hordes of Sauron and Saruman. Sure, I am here for this content.
Mm-hmm.
It's just good mass combat systems are hard to come by, and I don't think they've cracked it here. I mean, getting games to change scales gracefully is
tough.
Not something that most of them do well. I've got a few that I'd point to as games that make changing scale one of their core functions, and so that's the thing they do gracefully. Blades in the Dark is specifically here to change scale when needed during play, and I think that's
gracefully. Yeah, gracefully.
But this offers a bunch of different things about different kinds of siege weapons, and that's pretty cool. It's going to come up so rarely that any issues with its function will mostly not matter. But yeah, there's a ton of different stuff here, and this is a kind of variety that is its own benefit to me, where a lot of the weapon chart is just, you could have boiled this down. These two weapons really are similar enough that I don't need to engage with their fine distinctions. The things here are, for the most part, different enough that I'm ready to see them distinguished the way they are. So I'll say that for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the strength of this chapter lays in the way that they describe the different types of, say, war machines, and the different ideas they have about using vehicles in combat. The just descriptions of what siege actually is greatly interesting to me, and I think that's where the value is, and that's pretty much all I can say about it. I think that D&D at various different times has tried to do mass combat and siege warfare to various effect and to various success. This one is not maybe the most successful. It's probably not the least successful.
Right. I think that it's hard for me to get a sense of it in a brief way. But the only reason that I wasn't learning most of the content in here for the first time when I read this book is that I learned it for the first time reading a different D&D book. Some of the blue cover stuff.
The companion box.
That's a little before my time, old man. Castle Guide.
Whatever.
Hey man, the Castle Guide, DMGR2 from second edition was my faithful companion for many nights of reading, because I don't remember a time in my life when I was not in love with the idea of castles.
Yeah. Well, that's why the companion box set, the teal box from BECME, was so, like, in my mind, it was one of the ones that I just kept rereading because it had the castle creation and stronghold creation and war.
Yeah, for sure.
Rules in it.
I did actually pick up a companion, I believe, when I was working on an article on domain management for Tribality, and that one I really found to be ahead of its time. By comparison to like a lot of things that came far, far after it. Just it was trying to get across a lot of complicated ideas in as simple a way as it could, and it's still pretty involved material, but less crushing than it definitely could have been. Anyway, back to combat and tactics. There's a couple more proficiencies here because sure, but what I want to say about this chapter is finally just if you're gonna sell fighters special abilities that only appear in Siege Warfare, and it's those abilities are just the right to engage with Siege Warfare, you need to really think about what you're doing because like don't make Siege Warfare a big enough part of the game to support those fighters and then not sell those abilities to anyone else. That's just poor form. So I think that this big section, if you're gonna have a very kind of Pendragon-y or Crusades-y campaign that's going to involve a whole ton of siege warfare and reducing castles through continual bombardment and so on, which are the kinds of rules that this chapter's giving you, then that needs to get spread around. You don't need to have to play a fighter specifically just to get on that train. So I will say that a good mass combat system is that you can use in D&D or other personal scale games is one of those kind of holy grails that I've seen so many games pursue, and it's hard to think of one that I thought hit the mark. So I'm not going to hold it against them too much that this is also not doing it. So finally, chapter 9.
So monsters.
Yeah. So the point of this chapter is just to integrate a lot of the rest of this book with monsters and across creature types and intelligence levels and morale levels and alignments. And I mean, yeah, it's absolutely necessary. This chapter had to exist with the rest of what goes on here. I have no doubt about that, especially with the critical hit charts, but also in giving you tactical notes. And I think that doing tactical notes on different creature types is something that probably is widely needed, but most monster entries cover those well enough on their own.
Especially in second edition. I mean, second edition had huge, in some cases, 2-page spreads, with descriptions and habitat and ecology and behavior and all these different entries, which was glorious, but...
Yeah. So I'm not sure it's as needed here, but they go for fairly high degrees of specific detail because the critical hit charts, it is not obvious what you would do with a centaur, for example. And its answer is to, in fact, engage with sometimes it acts like a human and sometimes it acts like a monster, and that's where we are.
And that chapter's fairly short anyway, so...
Yeah, and then you get into how critical hit severity fits in with different monster natural attacks. So, sure. And that's pretty much the book. That's pretty much combat and tactics for you. Yeah, this is a book that I completely skipped at the time. I picked up a copy of it much later, and so it's the only one of these that I don't have in hardcover.
Interesting. It was the first of the the extra 2.5 edition books that I got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember where I got this softcover anymore, but I mean, I've had it for many moons now. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think still trying to cast my mind back to second edition play. I think I still regard it as being particularly awkward and unlovely. You know, I don't think I'm just judging it with sort of the years of experience.
Yeah. For my group at the time, the very much the overarching feel was awesome idea. We love the idea of this, but in play, it slowed the game down too much for us, and we ended up very quickly not using a majority of what was in there. But I guess I could say, but we did appreciate it for what it was attempting to do in a lot of cases. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, I loved the weapon table. That sounds kind of stupid, but just that portion made me feel like I understood some things, but in game use of the majority of the rest of the material in the book was not highly utilized.
Yeah.
At least not for very long.
Yeah. So tomorrow, at least for you listening to it, we will be talking about players' options, spells, and magic. And Lord knows if we'll be able to get through that one in any faster than we have these.
Well, it gets 3 episodes, same as everything else.
Because, man, it brings the weird. It is
yes,
by far and away the weirdest of these books.
And boy, we hope you're enjoying this series, because this was a lot of fun to record. But we know it's a big commitment to listen to these episodes 12 days in a row.
Just think of it as your new holiday tradition to listen to us go on about this again.